This is just a fun little project. Building a stand for my wife's Himalayan salt lamp that she got a while ago. I'm going to start out with a old cottonwood cookie that I have that actually was cut from a tree about probably 5 or 6 years ago. I cut like 6 of them and put them away to dry, and 4 of them wound up being firewood, splitting up, and I actually had 2 decent ones left that didn't split or anything, so decided to try something here. One side of it was flat. I had used it as a plant stand. I had some legs on the bottom of it for a couple years, and we got rid of the plant, so I had this laying around extra. So I decided to try and run it through my planer to flatten the rest of it up and get it parallel to 2 sides, and I was surprised how good it actually worked. Did a good job, didn't do much tear out or anything, and it actually came out really perfectly flat. So just, I did a lot of shallow passes, just taking a, maybe 30 thousandths or a little more off each pass until it came down so everything was perfectly flat and, perfectly parallel. That was a big surprise to me that I was actually able to, run this through my planer and get it to come out good without ripping it all apart. I guess that's a big plus for the spiral heads on the planer. So there it is. The cookie's all nice, flat, and ready to be sanded. A little bit of tear out, but that can all be sanded. But like you can see, there's no major cracks, and the bark is pretty much fully intact on that piece too. So it is a good cookie to start with for this project. So next thing I'm going to do is sand it, and I have that fan with a filter on it to catch the sawdust, and it was time to change the filter on that. So, I just have to slide out the old filter and then slide the new one in, make sure that grid's on the inside towards the fan so it doesn't get sucked in, and you're ready to go. Now another thing I like to do is I like to keep my sanding discs, the self-adhesive ones, paper and discs, in one of those Rubbermaid containers. It seems to help them from getting any humidity in them. It makes them last a real long time. So, that's just another little trick that I've been doing for years and helps out a lot, especially in the summertime when you get humidity in a basement shop. So I got my, got some coarse sandpaper on the sander, and going to start by, trying to get out as much of the little pulls and stuff from the planer as are left, and that's not too bad a job to get it to come out fairly nice and clean. So I started with I think this was 60 grit, and another finer grit, and then I went down to the finishing sander, and actually here you can really see how that fan sucks all the sawdust coming off of that little sander right into it, and kind of helps the rest of the shops stay sawdust free when you're sanding. So this fan does help quite a bit. I found out everything used to be just covered with sawdust. So I got that all sanded down, and then I needed a hole in the middle, which I had an old piece of, I think it's electrical conduit. It's about 1 5/8 OD, a little bit over it, and I had a 1 5/8 Forstner bit that I decided to try to drill a hole through it. Drilled good, but one problem that I ran into is with it chucked in the bigger drill truck on the drill press, it just wouldn't go deep enough to go all the way through the whole cookie here. So I drilled it as far as I could, get it on the drill press to have a good straight starting hole. And then I just went over to the bench and took a hand drill with a smaller chuck that would go right down in the hole there. You can see that, and did the final clean out of it and got it right through. Now that piece of conduit was actually a little bit over the 1 5/8, so it turned out it's going to be a real good tight fit in that hole, and everything should stay together pretty good. So I actually had to take a piece of block of wood on top of it and a hammer and pound it down in there to get it to stay. So got that in there, and then I went back and started putting some polyurethane on this. In the end, I wound up putting on I think it was 3 coats on the bottom and the sides like that, and then 4 coats on the top after sanding between the coats. Now painting that bark, that that took some time. I should have probably sprayed it, but it took a while, and you had to go back and keep going back over to get the little drippies out and stuff. But in the end, it came out pretty good. It took a little bit of time, but it came out pretty good looking, and all the little cracks and stuff did fill in. And I went over to the table saw, and I had some old pieces of dowel that I had bought at a flea market, I think probably 40 years ago. I had laying around, and they were kind of dark and aged looking, and I never had a project for them, so I set up that stop that I made for my saw, and I decided to cut a bunch of them to the correct length for to put around the bottom of that piece of pipe. And you can pretty much see I had to put a piece of wood on the miter gauge so the little cut-off pieces from the dowel would not come back and hit the saw blade and, come flying back at me or anything. So, that made it easy. And, there's that stop that I made a video about a while ago for my saw, and that's been real handy. I use that all the time. It just, when you're done with it, it just slides back into the fence rail there and, just it's out of the way. So I got these dowels all cut, and like I said, they're real old and they're kind of darkened from age and stuff, but I wanted to leave them that way. I want them to look sort of like a bamboo-y type stuff almost. So I just put a rubber band around, and I just started playing with putting them around it just to see how tight I could get them and how many it would take, just to kind of, this is what they're going to look like when they're done. So I got that all figured out, took some measurements so I could make some rings to go around them later. And then I went back and I just took some, I have some mini wax. It's like an accent stain that is a green that I use on a lot of stuff. And I just went back and put a coat of that on all of them. This is just one of those fun little projects trying to use up all the scrap that I had in my shop. Now, my first thought was I was going to mount them around that piece of pipe just using some leather, but I didn't have any leather laying around, and I didn't want to use my last belt that I have left, so I decided to do that, turn that into a little 3D printer project. So I got these guys all stained up, had to let them dry, and then I went up and I started drawing up a ring to go around the outside to hold them in place, and I used that AutoCAD Fusion 360, and there you can see what the ring looks like, and then you just click on the button to 3D print, and you can either send it right to Cura or you can just save it as a file, and I just saved the part as a STL file that can later be imported into Cura for slicing. So there it is, all ready to just be saved as a file to be ready to be 3D printed. And then here we go, we put it in Cura, and that actually does a slicing of it, and you can see all the different print layers, how it's going to print out as it prints. And this writes the G code, so you just run it through there, and you just load that into the 3D printer and let it go. Now, I did do that stand for it recently, and people have asked me, how steady it is. And here you can pretty much see it running. There's, basically zero vibration or anything in the stand. It turned out to be really rigid when it was all screwed together tight. There, you can get a little bit of vibration coming from the printer when it gets into these really little short strokes with high acceleration, but other than that, you actually feel nothing on it, and it works really good. So this is the first of the, I'm going to make 3 of these rings, and this is the first one printing out. I think it only took about 2.5 hours to print this, so, it's one of those things where you just start it up and you walk away and you let it go to town. And, there you can see it prints the center of them hollow. I'm just printing a 3mm thick wall on each side, and then the center of them is a grid pattern that's just a partial fill. So, it's kind of fun to watch every once in a while, but basically you can just walk away, and when it's done, if the bed's still hot, you can't get it off. It's amazing. I was trying to do another one quickly, but I had to wait for the bed to cool, and here it is 20 minutes later when it's cool, and you can see it pops right off. That I use the Elmer's just stick glue on there to hold them down on a piece of Pyrex plate glass that I bought. And here I'm getting ready for the second one. I just threw a little more glue on there, and I was a little lazy. I didn't clean the other stuff off because I knew I was printing in the same spot. So, here's the next one going, and then I just have two more to make after. Well, one more to make after this one here. So they go pretty quick, and then it's back down in the shop to try them out and see if they work. And in the meantime, you can see I just threw a coat of green on the bottom of that piece of pipe just in case they don't, all fit tight and you see through the gaps and stuff. You won't see silver. So, this is my first time trying to put them in there, and I'm just kind of praying that everything works right because if it's off by, even just a couple thousandths, it's not going to fit right. So, so far everything's going together real nice. It's a nice tight slip fit on all the dowels as they go in, so I'm real happy. And in the end, it actually turned out that they were just really a perfect fit. So I got them all down in that first ring, and once that was done, I just went up and I slid on the other two rings from the top. It just fit perfect. I couldn't believe it. There were no gaps, no nothing. Everything was just a perfect tight fit when it went together. So then there I'm sliding on the ring for the center, and that just goes right on there, and just that's sliding halfway down, and I'm just going to put a drop of super glue to hold that in place later once I get it all measured and the distance right. And then there's the top ring that goes on. So, there's the start of the base for the light. And it's a, nice heavy cookie, so it's real stable. And we're halfway up it so far. And time to make a couple more parts to finish off the top. I had a piece of cherry I wanted to use. It was just a piece of scrap laying around. So I decided to joint that up and get that ready. So I'm trying to use the same wood that I used on the other lamps that I had made, and keep it kind of looking a little bit like that, so everything goes together. So I got that jointed, and then went back and just planed it down to I think I made that 5/8 of an inch thick. And I really enjoy having that digital gauge on the Wixie gauge on the planer. That's been really a great addition to the planer. And it's dead on all the time. The batteries seem to be lasting good, and no problems with it whatsoever. And you can see I'm wearing this blue shirt. It's a down-filled shirt that I got at Costco around Thanksgiving time, and it is like the best shirt for wearing down in the shop. It's like super thin, super light, and sawdust doesn't stick to it. You can just take it, before you go up in the house, just take it off and shake it out a little bit, and no sawdust is dragged up in the house. So it's become one of my favorite shirts to wear in the shop. So then I had to make a circle, so I just got out the old compass and marked out the circle, and back to drilling a hole to go down over that pipe. So I just used the same Forstner bit, and this was the 1 5/8 bit that I used, and as I said before, that was really tight on the pipe. So first thing I did is I just drilled the hole in the center of the block there, and then I just went over and took it on the oscillating sander there, and just made a couple passes around with that to make it so it would just slide right down over the pipe. And I just went over and mounted that on the lathe. I trimmed it round on the bandsaw first, and then I just mounted it on the 3-jaw chuck on the lathe using that 1 5/8 center hole there, and proceeded to go back and just taper it and radius it off to match the parts I had made on those other lamps I just finished. So I got that all done. You have to be a little careful when you're sanding, on the lathe with a 3-jaw chuck, because you can catch those jaws. But there's the bottom ring, and then I had to make a top ring, and I had a scrap of 2-inch thick mahogany laying around from an old project years ago, so I figured I'd just use a piece of that because it turned out to be the right size to fit the lamp. So same thing here. I had to drill that same center hole to go over the shaft, and I was going to, in the meantime, I'm using that to mount the parts in the lathe at the same time. So I drilled that. This time I didn't square it off with, or round it off with the bandsaw. I just thought I could chomp it away with the bit, and it did take some time doing it this way. I would have been better off to take a couple minutes and just trim it round, but you know, you learn from your mistakes. So the same thing here. I just had to you know, turn this to the shape that I wanted to go up on top of that post, and I turned a little hollow in there for the lamp to actually sit down in so it would not fall out, and you know, that's what that looks like, and fits tightly on top of the shaft there, and then the light's just going to sit down in there like that. And I figured, being mahogany, you know, if I do get any condensation on the lamp later, it shouldn't bother it. So there it is. I put a couple coats of tung oil on the, you know, on that part and that bottom ring there. And then I went back and started putting this together. And for the bottom there, I just took the hot glue gun and I went around everything and filled in the gaps and stuff, and put a little bit on top just to, you know, hold everything together. And that was my quickest way to put it together, and just push that ring down in, and you know, 5 minutes later everything was all hardened and ready to go. Now this top here, this was a good tight fit, and had to beat it on a little bit to get it where I wanted it, and that's, you know, that's what I was really looking for. So I got that in place, and I did drill a couple holes in that metal pipe at the top, and I'm going back now and just drilling a couple pilot holes so I can put a couple screws up there just to make sure that nothing slips. So I got that ring mounted on the top, and then I went back to the lamp, and it came with a dimmer built into the cord, but that never really worked right. It was always kind of flaky, and I've heard that some of them have burned up. So I just went back and I put a regular lamp cord on the socket for the bulb, and I took that dimmer out, and I'm going to put a better one in the line later. So I flipped the fingers that hold it around so it would lock in my pipe too, instead of having to lock in the lamp. So I figured that lamp's going to get moist and get corrosion in it later, and I didn't want those little fingers to rot off. So, you know, light sticks up and then the lamp just drops on top of it there like that. I destroyed the bulb that's supposed to be in there, so I just put a nightlife bulb in there for now just to show you. And that's, you know, how it kind of drops over and all goes together. One more thing to do is, you know, put some feet on the bottom of it with some levelers. So you can see there were some old holes in there from some old feet that I had on it when I used it for a flower pot stand, and I just went back and I drilled a couple more holes that were 5/16 that these little T-nuts lock into, and you know, they just go up in there and they twist and they lock in good, and then you've got the thread in the wood just to, you know, allow you to get everything leveled up perfect. So I got 3 of them on there, and then went back and put a couple of strain reliefs on the cord to hold that next. So pretty much that finishes it, you know, everything up in the shop down there, and you know, I got the cord mounted, and just have to go upstairs and I'm going to wrap the rope upstairs. Now, when I did that sunflower lamp, I bought some of this coconut rope at my dollar store, and I actually bought some extra, so I'm going to use that on this project also. So it's, you know, it's kind of matching looking because it's, you know, in the same area of the house. So first thing I'm going to do is start with some double-sided tape to put on that pipe there just to hold the stuff from slipping and hold it tight, and, you know, help me when I put it on there. So I get these big rolls of double-sided tape at my dollar store. They're probably like about a $40 roll of double-sided tape. And they get all the surplus stuff that's cut like maybe 1/8 of an inch too wide or too narrow or something like that. And they sell them for $1 a piece, which is really a good deal because, you know, I use a lot of this stuff for CNC router, holding stuff down and, you know, holding things together, and use it for just about everything. So it's handy to have a bunch of rolls of this stuff laying around. So I just put it on the one side of the pipe there like that, and then peel off the backing. And that'll just give me a good place to start. And I tapered the rope, and if you notice there on this ring, I actually turned the spot for the rope to fit down in there to get the first layer in there, so it's nice and smooth on the edge there. So that helped a lot. So then it's just a matter of wrapping the wrapping it around, pushing it down, pulling it tight, and just trying to get it so you don't see any air or gaps between it or anything. And once I got it wrapped all the way up, I went back and just put a drop of super glue on each end of it, just so it wouldn't, come unraveled in the future. That was, the rope's a little bit uneven. It's a natural product, and it's not it's not all the same thickness. It's a little bit uneven and stuff, but that's kind of the look that I'm going for here. And it was cheap. It didn't, it was stuff that I had bought extra of and I had laying around. So I just figured, I try to build this lamp out of just, all scrap that I had. So it did take a while to, get that all wrapped around there and get it all nice and tight. But I kind of like the look of it when it's done. It's, it's real natural and it's fairly easy to do. So at this point, I was starting to get a little nervous because I had a 50-foot piece of it, and I had just kind of guesstimated that would work. But everything's starting to look like I'm getting ready to run short on rope before I finish it up. And then I got almost up to the top, and luckily there was still enough left to finish it off. I was pretty amazed. I didn't really want to have to splice anything in there, and I was pretty amazed when I got done wrapping it that I had, guesstimated the number, so it worked out just about perfect. There was about 2 feet, not even 2 feet left, I think, in the end when I was done. So I just kind of had to go back and trim that, so, squeeze up in that slot that I cut up in the bottom of that top holder with a lathe, and then I just took a screwdriver and able to push it right up in there tight, so you had a real nice tight seam. And then I went back and put a drop of super glue on it to finish it off. So with that all wrapped, it had a lot of fuzzes sticking out of it, so I just took a scissor and just went back and cleaned off some of the little pieces that were sticking out, just and then when I got done with this, I'm saying, thank God I don't have a cat, because I can imagine what a cat could do to something like that. But there it is. There's how much is left over. I was real lucky on that. And it's all done and ready to go back in the corner. So that's what it basically looks like. It's very stable. The weight of that cookie really helped. And you won't see the bottom of it. You'll just see the top there. And at night, it should just look like that lamp is just suspended in air. And you can't really tell from the pictures here, but that light is unbelievably a close match to the paint that we have. It's just, my wife saw that and she couldn't believe it, and she picked that up. And, I do have it on a remote control now. Got one of those three thing remotes, and the light in it, like I said, that lamp is a little bit underpowered for it because I broke the good one that's supposed to go in there. So you can get an idea of what it looks like, and at night it should look like it's just floating in the corner there. So I just thought I'd share this. It's just a quick, fun little build, just to clean up one last little thing for my wife. And I tried to make it out of everything that I had laying around, and scrap wood and scrap everything. And I'm real happy the way it turned out. And, now we can enjoy the salt lamp a little bit more. And now that we've got the Christmas decorations out of the way, it does brighten up the room a little bit more. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.